It is the year 1862. My name is James Downing. I've been called up to the front lines of Antietam, Sharpsburg, Maryland. I was very scared and wished I could go back home, but it was too late now. Before the Civil War, I was a doctor in New York City who worshipped God. I used to have a wife named Gracie, but she divorced me for believing that I was a coward and selfish. As time went on, government after government, city after city were fighting each other for just a border state from the north and south. I was part of the North and heard rumors of civil war. The North and South made an agreement on making Missouri the borderline, which they called the Missouri Compromise. But the southern states became furious and opposed war in the North. That's where I am now, a drafted doctor in this war of madness. I was waiting in camp and I heard the bugle call for us to go and fight. Our leader is Major General Joseph Hooker. The general told us to take the right flank in Antietam Creek and destroy one of the Confederate defenses near Junker Church, while the Union Army advances. There is no stopping now, we had to toe the mark. When we were marching, a Union soldier tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, we will have victory soon enough." I was still shaking after he said that, but he gave me a little confidence. All of a sudden, we stopped marching, and an officer yelled out, "Bayonets!" As we put on our bayonets on our rifles, the officer yelled out, "Look ahead!" As I looked in the direction he was pointing, there were almost 1,000 Confederates coming our way. Suddenly, the officer gave out a call and said, "Get ready, aim, fire!" Once he said fire, I pulled the trigger at the cloud of Confederates and ran away to the north woods. As I retreated for my life, I could hear the screams of my fellow soldiers getting killed. I felt really bad, but as I continued running, I saw a slave asking for help. He was on the ground with a wounded leg, so I dropped my rifle and helped him up. Then we retreated into a cave in the woods. I started a fire, and the slave woke up from his rest. This odd slave was stabbed in the leg with an Arkansas toothpick. He told me that his name was Ned, and he was stabbed by a Confederate soldier. Ned told me that he was a slave in Kansas and used to have a family there too. He told me how his family cared for one another to survive. As he said that, I was thinking of my wife Gracie, and how she told me to care for one another to survive too. I continued to listen to his story while I patched them up with some cloth I had in my pocket. He also said that his owner was a mean and selfish man that whipped them when he was wallpapered or drunk. As he said the word selfish, I thought about myself and how I was like that to my wife. After he finished his story, I was thinking, wow, he's been through the mill. Ned also said that he always wanted to vote because he never had the chance. I took a rest thinking and thinking. The next morning I headed to town with Ned and saw a newspaper that said, "A victory for the North in Antietam. Lots of lives were lost." In a little corner of the newspaper said, "A missing soldier." I knew that missing soldier was me, so I headed back to my fellow Union camp. As I carried Ned, a man stepped out from a building and said, "Hey you, you're supposed to be with your master." The man was a bounty hunter and he came running after us. We kept running until I heard a gunshot. Ned and I made a sharp turn around a corner of a building. I felt myself for any blood or rips on my duds. Then I looked at Ned and said, "That was a close one." Ned was silent. I knew what the problem was. The bounty hunter shot Ned. I sat him down on a chair in the alleyway we were in. I looked at his wound and the bullet hit his heart. I tried to save him, but then he put a hand on my shoulder and said, "It's okay, James. Now I could be in." As he said that, I said, "Balderdash, I can still save you." Then he died. I took Ned's body to the cemetery and buried him. I was wondering what was his last words, but it almost sounded like he wanted to say, "Peace." The next day I walked back to my camp and I rejoined my troop. I looked at the dead in the field. There was thousands of Union Confederate casualties. I stared at the bodies thinking about my life and how it could change. The year now is 1865, 4 years after the Civil War. As time went on, I became very grit and more helpful to others. I saved people's lives and I cured their wounds. One day I was walking around New York and I saw the 15th Amendment get published on the Constitution. Next thing I know, I see African American citizens voting for the first time. Then I looked at one of the people and there was a boy. Not just any boy, but a boy who looked like Ned. I thought about Ned and how he said that he always wanted to vote. I took a walk to the cemetery where I buried him and looked at his tombstone. I told him that I have changed and have become a better person. I left the cemetery, still looking back. Finally, 2 years later, I retired as a doctor and married a new wife named Lily. We had two children named Thomas and Richard. They were beautiful children gifted by God. Now that the Civil War is abolished and the slaves are free, I could be now at peace.